The New York Giants defense has been disappointing this season, but wait till you see just how much so. Locked On Giants starts right now.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all of my written work. And as always, we welcome on in our Blue Crew community members, our everydayers, our newcomers, and everybody in between. And we thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Giant fans, on today's show, we're going to take a look at the Giants defense. Now, looking at some stats and the amount that's been invested in this unit, I've been saying all along that the defense should be a lot better than what it is. It should be a top 15 unit. We're going to take a look at just what the Giants are getting for the investment they have made in this defense. And warning, it's not very pretty. So that'll be segment one. Segment two, we're going to talk about Kayvon Thibodeaux. Now, on yesterday's show, I talked about why the Giants shouldn't be sellers at the trade deadline. There was a report that there are teams interested in Kayvon Thibodeaux, and I looked at that and I said to myself, okay, I could see a case for moving him. And I'll talk about that in segment two, why I can see a case for moving Kayvon Thibodeaux. And then finally in segment three, Cam Skattebo was placed on IR on Tuesday. His season is officially over. Best of luck to that young man. But how did the Giants replace him? Well, we know who the players are going to be, but how are they going to replace him, and can they replace him? So we'll talk about that in segment three. So again, welcome on in to everybody. All right, let's start off with the Giants defense. Now, I want to give kudos to Tommy G over on X. Tommy G always looking up some stats, always putting together some information, and he kind of inspired this segment. Want to give him kudos for that. So the Giants defense, New York has invested $367 million in A-list players between Brian Burns, Bobby Okereke, Javon Holland, Paul Thibodeau, and so forth. They have invested premium draft picks in this defensive unit. Premium draft picks meaning day one and day two picks. 5 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and 4 third-round picks. Now, some of those picks obviously weren't made by the Giants. They were signed by the Giants. For example, Javon Holland wasn't drafted by the Giants. He was acquired. Same thing with Paul Thibodeau, was acquired in free agency. So just in terms of draft pedigree, 5 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, 4 third-round picks. What do the Giants have to show for it? They're 30th in overall yards given up. They are 29th in yards per game allowed. They are 27th in points allowed per game, 24th in passing yards, 30th in rushing. All right, those are your macro stats. This should not be the case with this defense. This defense has talent that should be top 15. So what does it all go back to? Folks, I don't like to place the blame on one person, but I'm going to go back to the defensive coordinator. Shane Bowen, I've been saying this for the longest time. I'm going to say it again now. I do not believe the defense that he runs is a fit for what the Giants have on that side of the ball. And if you need any further proof of that, ask yourself this. Bobby Okereke in his first year with the Giants, pretty good. Deonte Banks in his first year with the Giants showed flashes of being a decent cornerback. Tyler Nubin, he's regressed. Okay. Why have so many defensive players gone in the opposite direction? They've regressed. They've been inconsistent. What is going on? If it was one guy, I'd say, okay, it's that one player. But when it's multiple players, Dexter Lawrence is another one. This year, Dexter Lawrence's numbers are down because he's being moved, all over the place. What are they doing on defense? Are they trying to be cute? And oh, by the way, you look at the three pass rushers they have, Burns, Thibodeau, and Carter. Can you think of one instance where all three have been put in ideal positions and not having one that's out of position? Hasn't really happened that often. So overall, this defense, it's been a mess. And it shouldn't be because the talent level is there. Now, this was a concern I had when they hired Shane Bowen, because Bowen, as y'all know, runs a completely different system than what Wink Martindale ran. Now, I understand what happened with Wink Martindale. That was unfortunate. But in terms of replacing Martindale, you mean to tell me there wasn't a defensive coordinator out there whose philosophies were a closer fit to what the Giants had? I find that very hard to believe. Now, to be fair, when the Giants needed to replace Martindale, there were defensive coordinators who maybe were a little squeamish about coming to the Giants because Brian Daboll was on the hot seat at the time. Still is. And when you have a coach that's on the hot seat, I've said this before, you're going to have assistant coaches, especially the top of the line assistant coaches and coordinators. They're going to be reluctant to uproot their families to move to a city where possibly they're one and done. So that's part of the problem. So what do the Giants do here? Can they honestly continue after this season to go forward with Shane Bowen as the defensive coordinator? I don't think they can. Not with the talent they have. I mean, unless they're planning to totally tear it all down and bring in players who are better suited for what Bowen does, I don't see how they can continue onward. The defense was supposed to be a strength. It looked good in the during summer. It looked good in the preseason. And now all of a sudden, the team can't get out of its own way. We saw it against Denver in those last 6 minutes where it fell apart. We saw it against Philly. The run defense was just atrocious. This cannot continue. It's that simple. But unfortunately, the Giants are in a position now where they have no choice but to keep running it back with Bowen until they get to maybe the bye week. Maybe the bye week. Maybe the Monday night game. I don't know. The Monday night game coming up in a few weeks against New England. Maybe that's when they can make a change, if a change is going to be made. Now, Brian Daboll will insist that it's not all on one person, that it's on, that everybody has to take ownership of the successes and the failures. But it starts with the coaching. And there's just too many things that point to the coaching on the defensive side of the ball that make you shake your head and say, gosh, they're not getting their money's worth for what they have invested. They're letting teams run up and down the field on them for what they have invested in this defense. And if your ownership, remember, John Mara at the end of last year spoke about how he was tired of seeing teams march up and down the field against the defense. Well, we're seeing it again. So if Brian Daboll is retained as head coach, I guarantee you, folks, Bowen will not be back. He can't be. They've got to get somebody in who is a better fit for what they have as far as the talent goes. You can say, oh, a professional defensive player should be able to play just about any system, any type of thing. I call BS on that. Everybody has their strengths and weaknesses, and that includes football players. And I don't know, I just don't feel as though the Giants are optimizing the strengths of what they have on the roster on the defensive side of the ball. All right, Giant fans, coming up next, Kayvon Thibodeaux's name came up in the news today because teams are reportedly looking into acquiring him via trade. And I want to talk about that right after this. Hey, Giant fans, Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anybody else as of August 2025. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Hey, Giant fans, honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team, whether you're there for the NBA, NFL, hockey, whatever. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and price jumping at checkout, it's frustrating. That's why you need to check out Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included. So the price you see is the price you pay. See where your seats are, and the closer it gets to showtime, you stand to save even more. So go on and take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and coming up tomorrow on Locked On Giants, Crossover Thursday, it'll be myself and Brian Peacock, co-hosts of Locked On 49ers. We'll give you the latest storylines, the key matchups, the keys to the game. 49ers are coming off a loss. The Giants are coming off a loss. Who's going to come out on top? Well, we kind of can guess who's going to probably come out on top, but still, we'll break it all down for you on Crossover Thursday. So do check us out. All right, Giant fans, on this segment, Kayvon Thibodeaux had his name come up today in terms of the NFL trade deadline, which is coming up on November 4th, which is next week. And it was reported first by Jordan Schultz that teams were calling for Kayvon Thibodeaux to see if he was available via trade. Mike Garafolo of the NFL Network then reported that while teams have inquired of the Giants for Kayvon Thibodeaux's availability, the Giants are not interested in moving him, citing the fact that Thibodeaux was not only under contract this year, but also for next year. Now, on yesterday's show, I talked about the Giants and how I didn't think they would be buyers or sellers ahead of the trade deadline. But I got to thinking about this particular one. Now, if you had asked me at the start of the season or even the first month of the season, should the Giants trade Thibodeaux, I would have said no. And then I got to thinking, okay, should they keep him given how the season is spiraling out of control, or should they look to get the best possible deal for him? Now, I want to make it clear, I'm generally not in favor of moving talent off the roster. I don't believe in that. I mean, at some point, you've got to build your core foundation. And I think Thibodeaux is part of that core. But then, I go back to Sunday's game, an old friend, Saquon Barkley. And I said to myself, gee, could the Giants be heading down the same path? Now, let me tell you what I mean by that. The Giants picked up Thibodeaux's fifth-year option, which kicks in next year. After that, I believe they can franchise tag him for 2 more years. So they theoretically can control his rights beyond 2026. So for 2026, 2027, and 2028. But here's the thing. If the team is going to continue to spiral out of control this year, you've got Abdul Carter there. Abdul Carter, I think, is a guy who the Giants don't always play in the best possible position because, like I said, there's no creativity on the defensive side of the ball. So here's what I got to thinking. What if the Giants were to move Kayvon Thibodeaux? What would be the advantages? As I've said many, many times, the Giants don't have a comp pick next year. They are not scheduled to have a comp pick. They need a lot of help still. I feel like I see this every year this time, but it's true. All right. They need cornerback help. They're going to need linebacker help. They're going to need another receiver. Okay. They might even need, more offensive line help. I would even get another defensive lineman in here. So if you could trade Thibodeau for a premium pick that you can use next year, or if you could trade Thibodeau for, say, a top receiver that you don't have to, count that receiver's signing bonus, which is generally what inflates the cap hit, is it worth considering? Now, here's what's interesting. The Giants technically have a path to retain Thibodeau's services for a few years. What if now you get into a contract dispute and he says, you know what? I ain't coming in. I'm not playing for you until you redo my contract and you make me the highest paid defender in the NFL. Is anybody out there right now think that Kayvon Thibodeaux, as good as he's been for the Giants, and he's been very good this year, I want to give him his props, but does anyone out there think that Kayvon Thibodeaux should get paid like the top NFL defender? I don't think so. I don't think he's there yet. All right. So if you get into a contract dispute with him and he decides to hold out because he thinks he's worth the money, what good does it do to you? I mean, wouldn't you rather at that point get something for him, control where he goes, than to do kind of like what they did with Saquon Barkley? If you remember with Saquon Barkley, Barkley's fifth-year option was done. He didn't get the deal that he was looking for after being franchise tagged. All right. And then ultimately the Giants decided, oh, we're not going to franchise tag you again. He walked out the door and free agency went where he wanted to go, which just so happened to be a division rival. Do you really want to risk that down the line? I mean, I don't think it's worth it. That said, I still don't think the Giants trade Thibodeau because, as I said, he's under contract for next year. And then they can use the franchise tag on him if they need to the year after that. But right now, who on that team can bring any kind of value in terms of draft assets to a team that right now doesn't have a third-round pick, to a team that supposedly wants to add around their young quarterback? You can only do so much in the draft. So does it maybe pay to reconsider and move Thibodeau? Again, I can make a case for and I can make a case against. And like I said on yesterday's show, I don't think the Giants trade any of their players. Joe Schoen has had a history of overvaluing his players. And I would think it would take an absolute sweetheart of a deal for him to say, oh, okay, I'm going to give you Kayvon Thibodeaux. So it's kind of a weird situation. And then I didn't even mention the fact that, Brian Burns is going to be, his cap hit is going to continue to go up. And are you really going to want to invest big money in 2 pass rushers when you have Abdul Carter, who will still be on a rookie deal for the next 4 years. All right. In addition to this year, the 3 years plus the option year, which I'm sure they'll pick up. So you got to kind of look at it from a financial perspective. And that's why I'm just wondering if, yeah, maybe it does make sense to move Thibodeau. And again, I just want to say that ordinarily I don't advocate creating a hole on your roster. But in this case, are they creating a hole when they have another guy who's really waiting in the wings to step up and be more of an impact player? I think you can make a case that, you're not really creating a huge hole. But again, we're talking the Giants, and I don't think they make any trades. We'll see if I'm right. We've got a week to go. We'll see what they do. All right, Giant fans, coming up next, the Giants place Cam Skattebo on IR with a season-ending ankle injury. How do they replace Cam Skattebo? Can they replace Cam Skattebo? We'll talk about that after this.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance. You can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. The Giants move forward starting this week without running back Cam Skattebo. He was placed on IR on Tuesday. And how do you replace a Cam Skattebo? Well, I don't think you can. Every player on that roster is unique in his own way. Cam Skattebo, as we know, not only a good runner, but very energetic. That rubbed off on the locker room, rubbed off on the fans. He was very exciting to watch. I mean, it was almost like the Odell Beckham Jr. effect or the Malik Neighbors effect, a player who you actually enjoyed watching, not just for the play on the field, but for what he brought to the team. So how do you replace that? You can't. You can't because, you have Jackson Dart, who's got that same personality, that same infectious energy. But in terms of the running back rotation, now here's what's interesting. The Giants, after placing Cam Skattebo on IR, they claimed a defensive back, a cornerback actually, off waivers from the Cleveland Browns, which tells me, by the way, that they're concerned about their cornerback depth this coming week. Cordell Flott is in the concussion protocol. Paulson Adebo is still dealing with the knee injury. Javon Holland, safety, also dealing with a knee injury. So this guy that they claimed off of waivers from Cleveland, he can play cornerback and safety. So anybody who thought that the Giants were going to sign Turbo Miller from the practice squad and bring him up, no. What they'll probably do, I would think, is they'll elevate Turbo Miller this coming week, depending on the injuries. But that's what I think they would do. But let's take a look at Tyrone Tracy, because that's the guy who, in terms of the production that the Giants are going to be missing from Skattebo, that's the guy I think they're going to turn to. So I did a quick comparison between Tracy and Skattebo. In terms of rushing yardage, average rushing yards per attempt. Now, bearing in mind, Tracy has a little bit more experience under his belt. Tracy is averaging 4.2 yards per carry to Skattebo's 4.1. In the receiving game, though, Skattebo averaged 8.6 yards per reception to Tracy's 7.3. But let's look at Tracy. Tracy last year, 839 yards rushing, and he ended up with 1,123 scrimmage yards, which was not bad. Tracy has actually been a little bit better this year in terms of his success rate, right? So the success rate means picking up at least 60% of the required yardage on first down, and then 40% on second and third down, and just succeeding with converting. So Tracy this year has a 48.9% success rate, which is up from 44.3 a year ago. Where Tracy still needs to kind of show that he can handle the game a little bit better is in the receiving department, which is so ironic considering that he's a converted receiver. So in Tracy, I believe he's going to be the lead back in the committee. You're going to see a lot more of Devin Singletary, obviously. And I do think they will call up Dante Miller. I don't see how they go into the game with just two running backs. I think that's just really a big risk to do that. Now, can the Giants sign another guy? Sure they can. But I think it would go to the practice squad if they do that. I don't think that will be the case. On Tuesday, for what it's worth, the Giants had a big workout. They brought in 11 players. Most of those players were defensive backs and wide receivers, the two biggest needs right now on this team. So with the running game, it's going to be the Tyrone Tracy show. This is a good opportunity for him to step forward, step up, and show that, he's still somebody that we shouldn't forget. So that come next year, when Cam Skattebo returns, and he will return, I am confident he will return despite the long road he has ahead of him, you'll have a nice 1-2 punch of Skattebo and Tracy to look forward to if you were the Giants. So bottom line, that injury, it's a heartbreaker. It's going to be interesting to see how the offense responds. And what I would like to see starting this weekend, let them step up and start winning one for their fallen teammates. That's so important. And look, I would not be surprised if once Skattebo was given the clearance to be around the team again, that he is there behind the scenes. Now, he won't be allowed on the sideline because obviously, if you're allowed on the sideline, you need to have two working legs so that you can get out of the way in the event something comes over your way. So he'll have to probably sit in the press box, which I'm sure he's not going to like. He's going to probably want to be down on the field, but there's no reason why, he can't be around the facility, be in the locker room, visit with teammates, lift weights, whatever, he's allowed to do under the terms of being on IR. Obviously, he can't be on the practice field. I think he can be in meetings, if I'm not mistaken. So I anticipate he's going to remain involved with the team once he is physically able to do so. But Giants got to start winning, bottom line, not just for Skattebo, not just for Malik Neighbors, but just start winning. And, they've got a tough schedule that takes them right into the bye week. So we'll see how it all plays out. As always, keep it here on the Locked On Giants podcast, and I'll bring you all the latest there. All right. So thank you for spending part of your day with us here on Locked On Giants. For your next listen, get a double dose of Locked On NFL podcast with Tyler, the Madman Rowland, who gives you a shot of espresso to start your football day, while Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdowns to end the day. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Giant fans, I will see you tomorrow for Crossover Thursday with Brian Peacock of Locked On 49ers. Until then, have a great one.